Carol is a lonely girl at her school, where everyone is obsessed with a famous Korean pop group. One of the girls won't leave her alone, constantly asking her to translate the group's songs. Tired of it, Carol ends up breaking a mirror, and suddenly, a handsome Korean man named Shimon appears in her room. She thinks she's hallucinating, but Shimon assures her that it's not a dream. Soon, Carol discovers that her wardrobe is a magical portal that takes her straight to Korea. She tries to send him back because she has exams to study for, but Shimon won't let her focus. Carol calls him selfish, but later regrets it when she finds out that Shimon is the most famous idol in Asia. He, however, is upset because he made a mistake during a performance, and now people are spreading false rumors about him. Meanwhile, Carol signs up for a dance contest, but can't practice because Shimon keeps invading her room and spending all his time playing video games, making her life impossible. One night, she sees him sleeping like an angel and doesn't want to wake him, so she starts dancing, which is her biggest passion. However, she didn't expect Shimon to walk out of the room and tell her that her dancing is terrible. He laughs and challenges her to show him how to dance properly. Being one of the best dancers in Korea, he performs some moves that impress her so much she feels like kissing him. At that moment, Shimon takes off his shirt because he's sweaty, and Carol calls him a pervert. He responds that he needs a shower. Carol then uses the wardrobe to send him back to Korea, but she ends up in the idol's mansion. Everyone is worried about Shimon's disappearance. She tries to hide but makes noise, leading the idols to believe there's a thief in the house. John, another idol, saves her and says he knows she's in the house. John, a friend of Shimon, knows about the portal to Carol's room, and after hearing her story, he says Shimon needs time away from Korea to recharge. He asks Carol to let him stay in her room, promising he won't bother her. With his eyes shining with kindness, John convinces her, and Carol agrees, but on the condition that no one knows he's living with her. Carol smiles at Shimon, showing him that love exists, making him feel happier. He waits for her in bed, but she pushes him onto the floor because there's only room for one person in the bed. Shimon then sleeps beside her like a puppy, and Carol feels protected. The next day, her friends want to do her makeup, which annoys her, so in response, she puts chocolate on their faces and laughs. But the girls end up getting pimples, and in revenge, they steal the money Carol had saved for the dance contest and make a mess in the school cafeteria. Carol's aunt criticizes her, calling her useless and clumsy. Carol feels even sadder, remembering that her father abandoned her when she was young and that her mother had an accident. John comforts her by bringing flowers that seem to be a gift for her, but in reality, they're for Shimon, who can't live without them. John explains that once Shimon finishes writing the lyrics for his new song, he'll return to Korea. Later, Carol finds Shimon on the rooftop and tells him she bought his favorite candies, but confesses she took money from her wallet. Carol is furious and tells him that just because he's famous doesn't mean he can treat her badly. Shimon apologizes, and when it seems like he's about to leave, he spies on her through the wardrobe. Surprisingly, Carol gives him another chance. Carol practices her dance for the contest, and Shimon tells her she dances like she has no soul. He encourages her to release the anger inside her. She remembers when her aunt adopted her and made her live in a closet, and with that emotion, Carol dances much better. Shimon records her performance to submit to the contest. He decides to become her dance teacher, but waits for a bit. And by the way, don't forget to subscribe here on the channel so you don't miss the next summaries. Continuing, her friend comments that a man answered the famous Shimon's phone, and Carol tells him not to leave the house, or she'll have to punish him. Shimon responds that he needs some sun on his skin. Suddenly, John appears with Shimon's personal belongings. Shimon says Carol smells bad and asks her for deodorant. He's also hungry. John steals food from the house, but his companions catch him. He confesses that he knows where Shimon is, but the manager finds a replacement for Shimon and makes a trainee wear a scarf on his head. John doesn't like the idea because they need Shimon's sensitivity for the songs. Shimon decides to split the room into two parts, as teacher and student, to make it clear they're not lovers, although he tries to sneak into her bed. He has nightmares about his former teacher, who was very strict, and she soothes his soul, making Shimon trust her more. Later, her aunt scolds her, because social media says her store is dirty, and Carol feels sad. John cheers her up and asks her to help bring Shimon back to Korea, because there's an important event coming up. She tries to convince him, but he refuses to return, and she calls him arrogant. Shimon then reveals that she's made it to the finals of the dance contest. Overwhelmed with emotion, she hugs him, and Shimon enjoys the moment as if it were a kiss. At their best moment, Shimon's friends appear through the wardrobe and can't believe they've traveled through a magical portal. Another friend discovers them and drops the food on the floor. Carol asks her friend not to say anything, and he promises, realizing that she loves Shimon and her eyes shine for him. Shimon keeps his promise to help her become a dancer, and first, he makes her practice sports until she's sweating a lot. She almost faints, but he saves her, and Carol feels a confusing love because she's starting to fall for both Korean guys. She asks her friend to guide her around the city to make Shimon smile, since, even in his successful moments, he never seems to smile. She tells him that he should enjoy life. However, a girl recognizes Shimon, and soon a crowd of crazy fans begins to chase them. They hide, and to blend in, they dance with some elderly ladies, except for Shimon, who is annoyed. Carol asks him to dance, but Shimon refuses, so John dances with her instead. Shimon realizes he's been foolish and steps in between them, starting to train her right there on the street. She dances so well that people stop to watch, looking like a professional. However, Shimon isn't satisfied, and she calls him a grump. He responds that the most important thing about dancing isn't being perfect, but having confidence in yourself. Thanks to him, Carol kills it at the competition, and her friends throw her a surprise party to celebrate her success. That night, the two play rock, paper, scissors to decide who gets to sleep in the bed, and she loses. However, she wakes up in the middle of the night and returns to the bed. Shimon sacrifices his comfort so she can be happy. Her cousin takes advantage of her to organize an event and threatens to tell Carol's mother that she's doing ballet. But Carol doesn't care because dancing is her life. The group puts on a private concert just for her, saying that the show would be worth $1,000 and that it's a special gift. Then her classmate finds out the idols are in Brazil and says Carol is no longer her friend because she made her think she was crazy. Carol feels bad until John says kind words to her. When Shimon sees them together, he tries to seduce her, and the two compete for her love. Shimon becomes so tired that while he's sleeping, he accidentally hits her in the face with his arm. Suddenly he says in his sleep that Carol is the reason for his life, and that he loves her. At school, they take a test to find out who their soulmate is, and the result shows that John is Carol's true love, which makes her sad because she wanted it to be Shimon, her divine angel. Shimon hides when her friend arrives because he doesn't want to be discovered and chased all the time, since he wouldn't be able to live a normal life with Carol. John asks if she likes his new haircut, and Shimon becomes jealous when he sees John touch her. So, he says he has a date with Carol. They discover that this is the reason Shimon doesn't want to go back to Korea. But they say he's wrong because he's never wanted anyone in his life, and this won't be different since his heart is made of stone. Then Carol shows up with makeup, and they tell her she looks beautiful. They start dancing in front of her, but Carol dressed up for a date with her friend because her parents think they are dating. When she returns, Shimon, feeling jealous, asks what she did with the guy, and she says they almost kissed. Shimon pretends not to care and claims that it's impossible for someone famous like him to be with her. Because of this misunderstanding, they grow apart. Her cousin forces her to prepare sushi, and John helps her with his delicate hands. Feeling him so close, Carol thinks he's kind and that maybe he is her soulmate. After this, Shimon needs to return to Korea to present his new song. Before leaving, he asks Carol for a new hairstyle made by her. While she cuts his hair, Shimon looks at her with passion and says that being apart from her is the biggest punishment of his life, and that when he returns, he will kiss her. In Korea, the song is a success, and the manager is happy, but Shimon suddenly thinks of his mother and nearly faints, bumping into an important person and ruining everything. People say he's selfish and only thinks of himself. The boss claims that no matter how well they dance, if they're not a united group, they're a failure, and he dissolves the band for good. They try to apologize, but since they can't reach an agreement, they fight and hurt Shimon, who returns to Carol's arms, as she has missed him. Shimon helps her with a very difficult dance, and when they touch, they feel an intense connection, like a thunderbolt of love in their souls. However, while dancing, Carol is too gentle, and he tells her that she needs to be like a black swan, more confident. He gives her the task of going an entire day without letting anyone humiliate her, but she doesn't listen because she's forced to clean the bar, and her aunt even asks her to cook dinner. She doesn't refuse. Shimon tells her she needs to value herself and yells at her. Carol responds that she's sensitive and that he shouldn't yell because it makes her sad. Shimon realizes that he's actually angry at himself for being selfish and decides to change to win Carol's love back. John sees her dancing, and she gets irritated because he enters her room without permission. John talks to Shimon about Carol, saying that she makes them feel eternal happiness when they see her, since they're both in love with her. John asks Shimon to apologize to the manager so they can reunite the band, but Shimon feels like he can't continue with the group. He packs his bags and decides to move to Brazil to be with Carol. John begs him to stay because they need him. The two say goodbye with sadness. Carol wakes up tired of being bullied and is in a bad mood, confronting everyone who has mistreated her. Afterward, she puts on her mother's dance costume, remembering when she was a child and a car ran over her mother. She blames herself for her mother's death. Meanwhile, John writes a love song for Carol, remembering her eyes and the hugs they shared. Shimon also says sweet things to her, and she begins to dance for the contest. Unfortunately, the performance doesn't go well, and in the rain, she thinks of her deceased mother, and sadness overwhelms her soul. Shimon finds her and takes her home, where they take a bath together. He is about to kiss her, but notices Carol has a fever. He does everything he can to lower her temperature, preparing a special drink. Carol dreams of her dead family and is on the verge of death due to the fever. Shimon sacrifices his life by returning to Korea and asks his friends for help to save her. She faints at work, and disguised as mascots, they safely take her home. Her friend discovers them and asks if the rumors about the band's breakup are false. They say it's a lie, and since Carol can't do her chores, they do everything to help her recover. Shimon stays by her side, praying for her, because Carol doesn't want him to leave. Shimon lies beside her, and when she wakes up, he gives her his bracelet as a symbol of his love. He says he got it from his mother before being abandoned, and that the bracelet means a lot to him, so he wants her to have it. After this, John tells Shimon that he couldn't convince the manager to reunite the band, and Shimon decides to speak to the boss personally. The manager says that John isn't really his friend and only wants him because of the contract and the money. When he returns, Carol says that he's kind, and she's so in love that she gives him a passionate kiss. However, there's a problem. The one wearing Shimon's cap is John, and she thought it was Shimon. Shimon sees the whole kiss and feels a deep pain in his heart. Carol wakes up excited, saying she needs Shimon because the dance competition is about to start. But he's lying in bed, feeling cold and refusing to listen to John, who encourages him to go see her. Shimon is distant, and Carol wonders what happened. He reveals that he doesn't trust her anymore, that she betrayed him by thinking she was a loyal girl. She returns the bracelet he gave her and walks away without explaining, going back to Korea. Carol cries in sadness and confides in her friend. Meanwhile, the group moves out of their mansion, and everyone argues about having made Carol sad. They say she was the best fan they ever had because she even let them live with her. Shimon feels ungrateful and looks at photos of them together, remembering when they were a team. He thinks about the kiss, which now gives him nightmares, while John prepares a romantic surprise for Carol, telling her that she can achieve her dreams and become a professional dancer. He gives her new dance shoes, but she misses Shimon and realizes that she can't be happy without him. John takes the opportunity to confess his feelings, saying that she is perfect. Carol rejects him, as another man occupies her heart, and she realizes that kissing John caused Shimon's anger. The two friends talk, and John admits that he knows Shimon is in love with Carol. However, they both agree that they can't let their friendship be ruined because of her. They remind each other that they promised to be friends until death because they've cried together and never had a friend like each other. Meanwhile, Carol considers going to Korea to clear up the misunderstanding about the kiss. The friends make up for the sake of their friendship and announce to the world that the band is still together. Shimon writes a song thinking about Carol and the kiss he didn't give her. To avoid separating the group, he decides to close the portal with a wall. Carol decides to look for her father, and her cousin helps her. They find a letter from her father in her aunt's room where he says he left a lot of money for her. Her aunt catches them, and Carol asks where the money is. Her aunt angrily responds that Carol is ungrateful, just like her mother, and rips her dance dress, shouting that she will never be famous. Carol goes to vent to her friends but discovers that there is now a wall blocking the portal, and she cries in sadness, missing Shimon, who is in Korea making music. Suddenly, he senses that she's suffering but can't return because of the wall. and he suffers too. Carol tries to move on with her life, trying to forget Shimon, although her friend keeps reminding her of K-pop. She doesn't have time for it anymore. The friends release a new song, and all the fans are excited, except for Carol. However, when she hears Shimon's voice, she feels pain in her soul and breaks everything in her room that reminds her of them. But when she pays attention to the lyrics, she realizes that the song is about her and her love story with Shimon. Meanwhile, her aunt is diagnosed with a serious illness that can only be treated with very expensive medication that she can't afford to stop taking. Carol is devastated because she doesn't have enough money to pay for the medicine. The band's concerts are a huge success, but Shimon is sad. His friend asks if it's because he's no longer the leader, and Shimon explains that it doesn't matter. What's important is that the fans see that he has changed for the better. Shimon says that all this success means nothing if he doesn't have the woman he loves by his side, and that his heart cries every day without Carol. She finds letters in a safe that her father left for her on each of her birthdays. In one of them, he explains that they had planned to move to Korea with her, but after her mother's death, he was so heartbroken that he couldn't bear to see her every day because she reminded him of his late wife. He insists that none of what happened was her fault, that she's a beautiful girl, and asks her to live with the love they taught her and to fulfill her dreams. John says in an interview that he was the one who wrote the song alone. Shimon becomes furious and calls him a liar because they wrote the song together. The manager claims the idea was his because no one would believe that Shimon could have written the song since it was too romantic. Shimon responds that he is capable of love because he has an honest heart, and to prove it, he breaks down the wall that separates him from Carol. Carol decides to leave her home for good and tells her aunt that she spent the worst years of her life with her, calling her mean. Then the dance competition begins badly, but she thinks of her mother, and when she finishes, everyone cries over her incredible performance. Shimon finds her and tells her that she finally danced beautifully and that he is proud of her. Shimon confesses his feelings, saying that he wants to be by her side every day. They share a passionate kiss that ignites the fire of love. And although Shimon was arrogant, it was Carol's sweetness that made his smile grow and his heart shine like the sun, because love heals all problems.